Bouman with Defy Ventures. I'm going to let him tell you all about Defy Ventures, but I can tell you one thing very personal that many of you may not know. My son has been in prison before, and he's out, he's doing well now, he's got a job, and he's not doing drugs, which landed him in prison. But I can guarantee you that our prison system is little more than a warehouse for people. There's very little programming for them, there's very little effort to give them new skills that will help them find success outside the walls, and that's why I'm so very excited about what Defy Ventures is all about. With that, Karen, please take it away. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good morning.
Oh, one thing. They have a drawing for some shirts, and so please put your business card in here. We'll pass this around, and you might be a lucky winner.
Hustle harder. So, listening to all of you this morning, you're all hustling pretty hard in different ways. It's fascinating the breadth of different types of organizations that are represented today. So good morning, I'm Jeremy Bouman. I'm the Executive Director of Defy Ventures here in Nebraska. This is my colleague Erica Pieper. She is our Volunteer Relations Manager. Before you leave today, we are right now asking you to come to prison, and she will tell you more after I tell you about Defy in different ways that you can engage with our program. So our program was founded in 2010 in New York City by our founder, Catherine Hoke. And the premise of our program is we are not great as a country around rehabilitation. We focus on keeping the population safe, but our prisons are just becoming warehouses. Here in Nebraska, we're the second largest overcrowded population in the country. We have people kind of stacked up and very little programming. And so that leads to criminal behavior in the facilities, it leads to hopelessness, and then we're not preparing people for successful reentry. 76% of people that leave prison will return to prison within 5 years. That's the recidivism rate in our country. And 70% of kids with a parent incarcerated will follow in their footsteps. That's their birthright. And so we have that problem here. It's a real problem here in our state. So the premise of Defy is, we have found though that we have an untapped workforce and an entrepreneurial spirit and workforce in our state prisons. We have folks who are entrepreneurs, and they have a skill set that's unique. They've had to hustle from a young age out of necessity, out of the context of their childhood and the need to earn, oftentimes earn for the family before most kids need to learn how to read and do other things. But that hustle is what you all know, listening to all of your businesses. You're hustlers too. And we want to transform that hustle for people that have that real skill so that they can create legal businesses that will be profitable very quickly once they're released. It's really hard to get a job if you have a felony background. And we've stacked the deck where people do their time, come back out, and then society won't employ them. And so that leads to criminal behavior to earn. And so employment is our priority. That's our #1 goal. But entrepreneurship is a carrot we use to engage people in our program. And if you're having a hard time, getting a job, and you get out and you have a skill set where you can quickly launch a company based on that skill set that will be profitable quickly with a low capital barrier to entry, you have a higher likelihood of success, particularly in that kind of 30 to 45 day window when you first get out, where most people reoffend, where they're unable to get any traction. There's barriers around housing, there's barriers around transportation. So nationally, we do a 6-month program in state prisons and also in the community for people with criminal histories that we call CEO of Your New Life. It's a blended learning program, so participants watch 100 DVDs during that 6-month period. They work through a workbook. They work on personal statements. You're talking about that elevator pitch. So we really work with them on those personal statements, how they talk about their incarceration in a job interview. Most folks will either not mention it, which ends up with, likely not a job offer once people find out, or they tend to overshare because there's so much shame around, around the worst thing that they've ever done. So we teach them how, when they can get an interview, when they go for a loan, how do they sell themselves, and how do they talk about their incarceration in a way that provides some context and puts them in the best position to be successful. We do extensive resume coaching, and then every participant works on a business idea. So whether you want to start a company or not, the exercise of coming up with a business idea, creating a business plan, and then pitching that business idea at a Shark Tank style pitch competition in the prison is all leadership development, it's all employment readiness, and Defy provides seed funding in the form of IOUs to the top 5 winners of our business pitch competitions in the prison. So this week, we had our first graduation at Tecumseh. You've read about Tecumseh in the paper. They've had a lot of violence there. There's been 5 murders there in the last 2.5 years. This is a facility that is 170% capacity, that has 130 staff openings right now. So the people that work there are working 16-hour shifts. So you're overcrowded, you're understaffed, and so they had pulled all the programming out. So then there's nothing to do. That's when riots happen, that's where violence happens, that's where criminal behavior happens. Our program's rigorous. It's 15 to 20 hours a week of work. And so we are proud to be able to launch at Tecumseh and actually have a class graduate. And the hope and confidence that that provides changes prison culture. It keeps people busy. We not just teach business and entrepreneurship, but we teach character development. There's 17 courses that are taught around how to deal with shame, how to make a meaningful apology, how to be a better parent, how to forgive yourself, how to forgive others. And we see it's almost like a before and after picture from the time we do a kickoff in a facility until the graduation, where you have men and women who are now doing a 3-minute rocket pitch to strangers, to our panels of volunteers, and just the pride that instills in them. The program has been vetted by Baylor University's Business School. So the participants take a test at the beginning and end, where they receive a certificate in career readiness from Baylor University at the graduation. We do a full cap and gown graduation, and we do that in the prison. They walk across the stage, many for the first time, in a cap and gown, and they receive that Baylor certificate, and their families are able to come and attend that and see them graduate and have that opportunity to celebrate their accomplishment. And so those are the days I live for. We had one on Tuesday. We had 34 guys graduate our program, watching them give teddy bears to their kids, dance with their mothers, and just the pride that brings. And there were 5 people that, won the business pitch competition. So first place gets a $500 IOU of funding for when they are released. Second place, $400 and on down. That same program we do in prison, we do outside for people with criminal histories. And the people that want to start a business, on the outside we have an incubator with up to 15 months of additional training, mentoring, programming. We have a relationship with Google where we can provide Chromebooks and smartphones to our incubator, entrepreneurs in training. We call them entrepreneurs in training, or EITs. We use humanizing language. We don't say criminal, we don't say felon. These are people, and for us, they're entrepreneurs in training. So we give them the tools to incorporate that business and really help them work through those early stages that you're all familiar with when you're trying to scale a business. The businesses they pitch need to be very realistic. So if we have EITs say, I'm going to start a restaurant, 95% of the people in prison are below the poverty line. Do you have capital to start a restaurant? So the model is we want them to come up with business ideas that will be profitable within 3 months of incorporation for under $20,000 to start. So that provides that focus where a lot of these are skill or service-based businesses where there's kind of a low capital barrier to entry. We also have pitch competitions every 3 months in our incubator with increasing amounts of funding that we make available. So we're in New York, California. Nebraska was the 3rd state to have Defy. We're also in Connecticut and Colorado. So we're scaling nationally. So I'm kind of like the franchise owner of the Nebraska program. We serve at the Omaha Correctional Center. We serve at the Nebraska State Pen here in Lincoln, Tecumseh, and we're very excited to be launching in mid-February at the York Women's Prison. And so we'll have the program kick off there on February 15th. So that'll be our 4th facility. And then later this year, we'll be here in the Lincoln Correctional Center. And then our post-release aftercare services are up. Nationally, we've incorporated and launched 185 businesses of our graduates. Those businesses have hired an additional 400 people coming out of incarceration predominantly. They're fellow EITs. You know, not everybody wants to start a company, but this brotherhood that's being created, we're creating, you know, we're doing job creation and business creation for businesses that are felon friendly, from people with felony backgrounds. Our biggest pride point is we have a 95% employment rate of our graduates, and that is highly because of our volunteers. We have just incredible volunteers that when we bring people into the prisons and they get to know context around people's lives, a little better understanding of privilege, where we're like, where we're different. But now, you know, I've met Sean. I know that he's working hard. Not everybody in prison is ready for something like this, but I've gotten to know him, and I might be inclined to make a phone call on his behalf, or be more inclined to hire somebody and take that calculated risk of hiring somebody with a felony background that's been through a very intensive 6-month transformational program. We also have a less than 5% recidivism rate, and jobs and employment are key to that. That getting that job when you get out increases your chances of success astronomically. And so 3.2% of our graduates have reoffended. And again, the national average on that is 76%. So we have a model that's working, that we're kind of beginning to scale across the country. And we're excited to have new business creation here in Nebraska. We're here a year, so this is a relatively new program in the state. We have 75 that have graduated our program to date. We have 180 currently enrolled in our prison program. But, you know, we do really good work in New York and California, but those systems are huge. We have 5,400 people in Nebraska in prison. We have 5,400 people in certain facilities in California where we serve. That's not too big to get our arms around. 5,400 people, that's a manageable population where with programming and community support, we can actually move the ball in Nebraska, you know, and so we're becoming a national model for how to do this work. And with our overcrowding situation, we don't have a choice. And the reality is 96% of people in prison are getting out. They're getting out, they're coming out. What do you want coming back? Do you want people who have done nothing during their time, or people who are going to be prepared for work, ready to contribute back to society, to parent? And so it's a collective responsibility to prepare all these folks that are coming out anyway. They're moving into our communities, and we want them to have the proper tools and support to be successful. And that's good for everybody. So we want you to come to prison. We have some folks here today that have been to prison with us, which is really cool. Tony's come in, Vaughn's come in a bunch. I think that's it in the room, but so they can speak to their experience. They let Vaughn out, which I'm always shocked by. I'm never sure if Vaughn's gonna be there when we leave, but they keep letting him out. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I'd like to briefly have Erica explain a couple of the types of events we have. And this is the group that we need to come in. Business owners, people who are in startups, listening to the breadth of different types of businesses. We have that mirrored in the prison. Our second place winner in the state pen, it was a agricultural drone business and concept. We have a lot in the food and agricultural sector. We have a lot in construction and cleaning businesses and arborists and lawn care, and the creativity is staggering too. We have a couple kind of rock star EIT graduates that I'll mention. There was a drug dealer in the Bronx making $2 million a year when he was 19, got arrested, name's Cos Marte. Went in about 70, 80 pounds overweight, taught himself how to work out while he was in solitary confinement with no weights, no anything. Lost all that weight, taught guys on the yard how to do this workout. Guys collectively lost 1,000 pounds. He went into our incubator. He won our pitch competition, and Cos Marte has a company called ConBody. He has a prison-style fitness boot camp in Lower Manhattan where every personal trainer has a felony background, where it's like a fake prison where you're working out. And he's got one of these now in Saks Fifth Avenue. He's franchising nationally, and he was one of our graduates. One of our West Coast winners worked in the kitchen in prison, and the prison food's not great. It's often outdated. So he would find fresh ingredients and make protein bars. And he won our pitch competition and launched a company called Prison Bars. And they are criminally delicious protein bars. That's what it says on the label. And he's had 3 rounds of funding. He has national distribution. And so by transforming that hustle and giving folks that have that skill set the tools to do this in a legal context, everybody wins. And so I'm going to let Erica share a little bit about possible ways that you can get involved.
Hi, everyone. So there's a couple different options that we have for people to get involved. And so often people say to me, well, I don't know that I have a skill set, or I don't know that I have enough background or expertise to come in and coach. All of the people in our prison system right now have no access to internet. They have no way to do research. They have no way to really have any idea what's going on in the community, who their competitors would be, things like that. So I often ask people to think about, what would it be like if you were trying to start a business or trying to write a resume or work on a personal statement without any feedback, without any internet, without any sort of support? And I think that gives a little bit of context of why our volunteers are so important to our participants. So a couple of the things that we do, one of the first events that we love bringing volunteers in during a cohort, so the 6-month period, right in the middle, we have a business coaching day. So during these days, we work on resumes, we work on personal statements. You'll be matched up to do one-on-one coaching and mentoring. We also do a lot of relationship building during these days. So we do activities that bring to light the differences that we as volunteers may have with the EITs, the similarities that we have, the positions that we've been in our lives that have really created the opportunities for where we are right now. So those days are pretty special to me. We also have deep dive coaching days, which are a little bit further on throughout the cohort. So the deep dive coaching days, we work on late stage business ideation. So you're giving feedback on, that your price point is a little bit high because all of your competitors are actually doing something very similar. What are you going to do to make that difference? So those deep dive coaching days, we don't do a lot of relationship building. It's intensive coaching sessions. The last opportunity that we have for volunteers to come in is our business pitch competitions, which Jeremy mentioned we had earlier this week at Tecumseh. So during those days, you would come in as a volunteer, you would serve as a judge on a panel for one of our EITs who are going to pitch their business ideas. So they would have 3 minutes to pitch their business ideas. You would ask questions, give them feedback, and advance our EITs through the rounds up to the top 5. So this is such an incredible opportunity for our EITs. They don't want you to baby them. They want to hear some real feedback. They don't want pats on the back. They want to hear you say, well, this is a terrible idea, but this is going well, so keep working on that. So our volunteers are so critical to the success of our program. We have had some incredible volunteers who have come in to then come out to say, yeah, absolutely, I'd be willing to hire someone with a criminal history. Or, yeah, absolutely, I own an apartment complex and I'd be willing to let someone live there. Now that I have sat down and had a conversation and looked someone in the eye and understood, yeah, I don't want to know you for the worst thing that you have ever done.
You have any questions? Yes, sir, in the back.
The last speaker we had in, when I talked about some of the mental stress that a lot of entrepreneurs can go through, and in particular, there's a pretty high suicide rate. I imagine when you double that with the pressures of trying to rehabilitate yourself in society, fresh out of jail, you don't want to fall back into the prison system. Is there any type of mental coaching or counseling that you guys give also to try to help entrepreneurs who are coming out of the prison system?
So the support services, when they get out, is where the rubber meets the road. We are laser focused on employment and entrepreneurship, but we partner with organizations that do substance abuse, that do mental health, that do housing. There's a lot of different nonprofits in those spaces that we partner with. State Corrections is our biggest mental health care provider in the state. That's where our mental health population, when there used to be hospitals and things, it's become our prison system. So I would say probably 70% of our participants have mental health challenges where they're working with psychiatrists in the facilities. We have more PhD psychiatrists in Nebraska than almost any state, but they're still nowhere near enough. The community part is critical, and so when people get out and graduate, we've created the Defy Entrepreneurship Network to create that community where we have family programming, where it's almost like a fraternity where we keep guys involved, and when the women begin getting involved, where their families, will have outings, we have aftercare, and when you get out, you want to gravitate to community, and oftentimes it's not the healthiest community. That's why when you don't have family, you join a gang. You want acceptance, and you can find that in a gang or in some of the things in the neighborhood that might not be positive. So we very quickly, because we get to know them in the prison, very quickly try to plug them into community when they get out. We see them within that first couple days. We make sure that they're getting connected into our aftercare, that they're getting plugged into a faith community, that they're getting plugged into positive community. And that's a difference between a successful reentry and going kind of back to the old ways. But the mental health problem is very large, and the problem is so big, and we do have partners that do specialize in that, where we make referrals for that kind of aftercare.
You have mentorship going on while they're in there. You have, in other words, to keep that relationship going once they're out. Are you looking for volunteers and mentors?
We are, yes.
So they've got that trust level, not only while they're learning, but also having that in place when they're out of prison.
We do. We have a mentor. We are also recruiting not just people for in prison, but kind of like teammates mentoring. We pair business people, volunteers, with our EITs outside that commit to an hour a week for a 3-month period. And oftentimes there's kind of some business coaching, but what it really is it becomes an accountability partner. It becomes that support, somebody to walk alongside an EIT. And so as our post-release program grows, if you don't have time to spend a half a day in prison, we are looking for people that would be willing to be paired with an EIT and do post-release mentoring.
So you talked about Tech House then that you have this first graduating class, and obviously there are the issues there. How long does it take to really start seeing the impact as far as the culture in that institution? Is it several iterations of this, or do you see some real significant things right out of the gate?
We see some significant things right out of the gate. Tecumseh is a very complex facility. They have the general population, there's about 700 people. There's 500 who are in protective housing for various reasons. That's where we have death row. That's where we have a lot of solitary confinement. So the problems at Tecumseh are very focused on one particular housing unit. And we do have participants from that housing unit, but that's where the violence and riots have been. And so we do see some early returns on just the guys that have graduated and how they talk to COs differently, the respect they have for the people in their community. And we ask for gang leaders to be in the program early on, because if you can get the gang leaders bought into the program and committed, then the gang members are allowed to participate. And so we had 3 of the gang leaders just graduate, and that opens the doors. You're not allowed to do stuff if the leader doesn't say that you can. And so that's one area. And just even having those gang leaders in the same program where you've created a safe space does begin to change culture. But it will take a few iterations. We're on our 3rd class at Nebraska State Penitentiary, where the staff sponsors we have said, you are changing the culture here, and we're starting to really see it. So it improves over time, but the early returns are really good.
I want to speak to that really quickly too. This past graduation, we had 3 people in the top 5, finished top 5, that corrections officials has said to me at the very beginning of the program, these people aren't going to graduate.
Yeah.
These people aren't going to do well in your program. They're going to be out in the next couple weeks. They made it not only throughout the whole 6 months, but went on to win seed funding. So I think that really speaks to the way that corrections officials even are looking at the participants of our program, and how that dynamic and that relationship changing in turn changes culture as well and keeps people safe.
Yes.
As a personal banker, I work with some released inmates right now, and it does seem that when they come out, they've secured that job, but now they don't know what the next step is in terms of managing their money or finances, past cashing their check and taking the cash. What kind of, is there any financial education? Because I've had successes with some that I would say that I was very proud. I helped them to find financial security outside, and then I have one that's gone back.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you for some successes and for even hanging in with some that weren't. We do have financial literacy in our curriculum. It's a pretty key piece. Most of our EITs have terrible credit. Most of them have child support that accrues while you're incarcerated, so they come out with these mountains of debt and bad credit scores. So we do have a lot of financial literacy components in the curriculum. And then we bring in people like yourself that really kind of are more specific to each person's situation. So if we have a session on how to restore your credit, we'll bring somebody in from a credit union to kind of go deeper and then answer the specific questions based on the situations people have. That's one thing I didn't mention is there's a 20-page life plan that they work through on their own that we have for them when they're released. It's their budget, it's their schedule when they get out, the resume, the personal statement, self-defeating beliefs, self-fulfilling beliefs, but that financial component is they do the worksheet and they have that ready. But getting loans is difficult, even for these small businesses. So we're working with like the Nebraska Enterprise Fund that's kind of helping people get to be bankably funded or loaned. So it's still a struggle, but that is a huge key component of our training.
I'd like to say I've been to 2 pitch day graduations and I think 1 coach day. And it is a moving experience. You're going to laugh, you're going to cry. These are guys that want to be there. They're not required to be there. They have asked to be there.
You mean in prison, you mean at the class?
At the class and in the program. And yeah, they made a mistake. Some of them made some very big mistakes. Probably when they were in their late teens, early 20s, some of them 20, 30 years ago. These guys are serious about getting out and making a positive contribution. That's what they want to do. They just want to know how to do it.
And we don't condone the stuff they've done. We hate the stuff they've done, right? But 20, 30, 40 years later, you're right, most violent crimes are 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. And we have guys getting out that are 40, 50, 60. They're different people. They're adults now. Their whole perspective is very different. And not everybody wants to do our program. It is voluntary. And we typically graduate between 50 and 60% of those that started because it's hard. And the facilities have a 1 strike rule, and that's not our rule, that's the facilities rule. If they have a certain misconduct report, they are immediately removed from the program. They can apply to a future class, but if they're caught with contraband or get in a fight or things like this, and so that also makes the prison safer, because we're seeing that the behavioral incidences are going down because of the privilege to be in Defy.
At ServPro, my position is the Director of Business Development. I'm learning more responsibilities, but on a hiring side, we are locally owned and operated, but everything goes through ServPro Corporate. All of our employees are screened very high. I mean, because they are in houses, they are in commercial property. So if we were to hire somebody like this and they go through that screening process, is there like a recommendation that comes out or something? Because I mean, we have turned employees down because of their background. Now this group is coming through a program, so I don't know if it puts them in a different category.
It wouldn't. They still have the felony background. The difference would be if your company decided to change policy.
Right.
There's 800 industries that people with felony background are immediately banned from for a variety of reasons. And so it's a shift. It's a shift for companies to take that risk. The bigger the company, the more HR and legal involvement. But philosophically, the companies that get it, they get hard workers,
Right.
people that want that second chance, and it's not a 100% success rate, right? But by and large, they're going to get really motivated employees. We just hired one of our graduates for our Nebraska Defy staff, and we've seen some companies that have come in beginning to hire that typically wouldn't. So that's where I encourage you to challenge, challenge the people that make those decisions.
Right. So there's well, to go a little bit further, so there's nothing there that says that they've gone through a program.
Oh, sure. I mean, that's on their resume.
Well,
and
yeah, I mean,
we vouch for our guys because we find that the people that are hiring them, they say, give me more.
Right.
These folks are ready. So
Right.
they get a certificate from the parole board, congratulating them that all the parole board members sign. It's not a requirement to be parole eligible, but it's a highly appreciated class that they've taken that the parole board acknowledges.
Right.
And we're not a state program, so we don't have to adhere to all of that stuff. We're private. We're a nonprofit. We're privately funded.
My comment was going to be, that's probably an opportunity where those people can come to your corporate people and educate them on what that's all about.
Right.
And we'll do that. And we're trying to get more businesses to bring teams in. It's an incredible team building opportunity for people in your company. If you have a service focus in your business where you'll be able to all go work for Habitat or go to the soup kitchen, it's a profound shared experience to send 10 people from your company to prison to provide expertise and advice, to have that experience together. And we'll come to your company, we'll train everybody so that they know what to expect. We'll have some conversation on the front end, and then you go through the experience. And then we'll come back and we'll debrief it with you on the back end. What did you learn? Was it different than you thought it would be? And seeing what you learn about your colleagues and how you grow those bonds in your company, it's pretty incredible. So we offer that as well, opportunities to bring groups in.
What, if I was interested in volunteering, what type of training and how long is it? What is that encompass?
The training, typically Erica or I, we're small enough where we'll literally sit down with you and walk you through the whole thing. We have materials that we send you to review. We have videos that you'll watch. For people that come in more than a couple of times, the state corrections requires a training at a facility that's about an hour and a half. And so that's their training. But we make sure everybody going in knows exactly what to expect. We've never had any issues in the 14 years we've been doing this work. No violence, no nothing. But we want you to be comfortable and also know about the coaching aspects and how we do the coaching. So we're pretty high touch. We've had about 300 volunteers in Nebraska that have come in to date. And we've sat down with probably just about every single one of them, either in a company setting or one-on-one. So if you're kind of like maybe, but I need to know more, we'll sit down. We'll get you up to speed and let you see the videos and make sure you're feeling well prepared to come in. Yes, sir.
I was wondering if you start with younger people like that. I support an organization that works with the juvenile delinquents here, and I just wonder if you work with that to get them, get their minds situated differently, to think differently, so they stay out of prison.
We work in a couple of youth facilities. Our curriculum is really more geared towards 18 and up, and we do even better kind of 23, 24 and up. The 16, 17-year-olds, they don't want to take the program. There's too much work. They're not thinking in those terms yet. So we just haven't been successful with that demographic. There's a lot of groups that are working with youth in that way. But we have a number of participants that are 18 or 19 years old that have moved out of youth corrections into the facilities. There was this kid in our program at NSP. He looked like he was 11. We sang happy birthday to him. It was his 19th birthday. Double murder. He's on a life sentence, no parole. 19-year-old kid. And so we do have some younger folks. We also philosophically don't turn anybody away that applies. So we do a 5-hour kickoff. So we're very clear about the expectations and what we do and get commitments, and we give them a 15-page application on their way back to their cell. We give them 3 days to fill that out. There's a personal essay component, but if you fill it out, we accept 100% of the people. So we'll have people in our program that are on life sentences, that are on longer sentences. They become peer facilitators often for the next class, so we'll have 10 or 15 graduates on longer sentences, stay involved. They're our best recruiters. They do peer group facilitation. But we just decided, we do really well, obviously, with people who have about a year or two left. But we will have folks that just want to learn and grow, even if they might not be getting out.
The organization.
This is actually the last question. We're running out of time.
So they work with youth throughout the time, and there's a small group that go into the juvenile detention center and work with them.
That's great. That's great. One more question?
One more? If not, thank you both for being here. That was a wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to give you both a Focus Sweet mug.
Thank you.
To enjoy your
Awesome.
caffeinated beverages.
That's great.
I sent Jeremy a reminder email on, I think, Monday or Tuesday, just to remind him that he was going to be our speaker today. And I've never gotten an out-of-office message quite like his before. The out-of-office message I got back simply said, "I'm in prison." I'm in prison today. And he was. He was out at the code, so.
That's
I
important,
put
because
that on my
you
voicemail
can't take your
today.
phones in, that's the thing, you're without technology for 8 or 10 hours, so that's.
If you would like to volunteer, or can people donate to Defy Ventures?
Absolutely, like I said, we're a nonprofit, and it costs $36,000 a year to incarcerate one individual for 1 year in Nebraska, $92,000 for a youth, $36,000. Because it's blended learning, we use volunteers, it costs about $500 per participant. So we're always raising scholarship money to put as many people through the program as we can. So 500 versus 36,000 over a period of time. The social ROI is pretty high. So yes, if you'd like to support us, that'd be wonderful. Our website's defyventures.org. Our Facebook page is Defy Ventures Nebraska. Like it, and you'll see all our events, all of our stuff.
We were just on KETV last night. If you want to search that, it's pretty exciting.
So again, thank you for being here. If they can hang around a little while, they might have more. Oh yeah, we've got, they want to do their raffle. Remember to grab one of the initial copies of LNK News before you leave. Thank you. Peg McDonald.
Thanks,
everything. Thank you so much.
Ruth Bethman Eubanks.
Yeah,
Yay!
first coffee to the winner. That's not fair. First coffee to the winner. Good for you.
That was good coming back.
Green
Right.
real quick.
Tony! Riley Rinky.
Hey, right there.
David, forgive me for if I pronounce it wrong, Steinberg.
David, yeah.
Great, thank you. Be here next week for Digital Sky and learn more about drones and maybe how they can help your business or chase cats on the farm. And, with that, we'll see you next week. Thank you for being here. And if you are interested in donating, volunteering, please come on up and talk to us.